If you're considering purchasing a small commercial investment property, then there's a couple of things that you need to consider carefully. In my view, the two things you need to really focus on are one, the tenant in the property. In other words, how strong or otherwise is that tenant? Because this is going to provide you with your flow of income from your property investment. The second part, or the second significant thing you need to look at, would be the structure of the property itself. The structure, the integrity of the structure, the condition of the property, and the location. So let's take a look at the two scenarios and the two things that I'm suggesting to you you need to be very focused on when you're looking at a commercial investment property. One is the tenant. If you buy a property for $1 million and you have a very good commercial tenant in it, the residential or it's commercial investment property you're buying, there's a sitting tenant on a full repairing and insuring lease, a 35-year lease, and you have somebody like McDonald's or Burger King or Supermax or Super Value or Apple Green or some really strong covenant like that in the building, then your income stream is going to be fairly well protected, and you definitely are not dealing with a man of straw if things go wrong, or if there's any dispute about the rent or any dispute about any of the terms and conditions of the lease as things progress. And therefore you're going to accept a yield, a lesser yield than you might normally expect or might normally be prepared to accept. For example, if you're buying a building and you're paying $1 million for it and it's McDonald's that's in it and they're paying 40 grand a year in rent, your yield is going to be 40 or 4% rather. So you have a yield of 4%. That's quite a low yield, but you have a very good tenant. On the other hand, if you had a yield of 6 or 7%, in other words, your rent was 60 or 70 grand a year, you're paying $1 million for it, the likelihood is you're not going to have a blue chip tenant like a McDonald's or a Burger King or somebody of that nature. You're going to have a small business owner, you're going to have a small man or woman carrying on a business, perhaps a barber, perhaps a hairdresser, perhaps a nail bar or something of that nature. They're not going to be a major brand, they're not going to be a major franchise, and therefore you have to weigh up the yield you're going to get with the risk involved. So you may be happy enough to get a yield of 6 or 7%. You may be happy enough to get a rent of 60 or 70 grand per annum. But you do have to factor in the additional risk involved with a one-man or one-woman operation. So if things go wrong, for example, with non-payment of rent, then you're looking at a messy enough situation in trying to recover the rent, trying to get vacant possession of the property, if that's what you want to do, and so on. You do have to take certain legal steps. It can be slow, and obviously rent is going to be accumulating if it's not being paid. You also have the cost of going to court. You may well end up then with a judgment against your former tenant for rent, outstanding rent and legal costs. But quite frankly, enforcing this judgment may be impossible because the tenant simply doesn't have the money. So that is the first major factor you need to look at in considering a commercial investment property. The tenant, the strength of the covenant, the strength of the income stream. How certain is it going to be that it will continue coming? How certain is it going to be that you won't have any difficulties? And that will come down to an assessment of the financial and other strength of the tenant. The second major thing you need to consider would be the building itself. The structural integrity, the structural soundness of it, and whether it's in good or bad condition, and whether it's going to need a lot of ongoing maintenance, or perhaps it's a relatively new building that will not require any foreseeable maintenance in the future for quite a period of time, or a business or a property rather that's in poor structural condition that will inevitably lead to or need quite a lot of maintenance and perhaps remedial work and roof repairs and all that sort of thing. If that's the case, you obviously you need to get a structural survey carried out. But another thing, and that's to assess the condition of the building. The other thing you need to consider is the location. You may have a very good, what appears to be a very good investment property, and a good tenant carrying on a very good business. But if it's a one man or one woman operation, and if it's very particular or specific or personal to that particular individual, and they leave or they go bad or fail to pay the rent or things break down between you and you must evict them, you must consider then the location of the property. And that property location may have been well suited to the business, the endeavour that was carried on previously by the previous tenant, but may not be well located for other alternative uses. So you need to consider the location of the property. So they are the three things I think you should look at closely when you're looking at a commercial investment property and you're considering such an investment. A, the tenant and the soundness of the tenant and the likelihood of you continuing to get your rental income stream into the future. B, the condition, the physical condition of the property itself. And C, the physical location of the property itself. Remember, you can do a lot with a property. You can do a lot with tenants, but you cannot move the location of the property. So the physical location, you may have, for example, a chap or a girl carrying on a good business down a side street in a bad location, and because of their personal pulling power, their personal brand, their personal clients base built up through the years, perhaps even at home, if they walk, if they leave, or if they don't renew the lease, you may be ending up with a property that is difficult to let because it's actually in quite a poor location, an obscure location, and is only suited to a very narrow range of businesses. I hope you find this video useful about making an investment in a commercial investment property. And if you do, I would appreciate if you gave the thumbs up down below, and you may be interested in subscribing to my YouTube channel. If this sort of thing floats your boat, and if you're interested in Irish law or Irish business, then you might consider subscribing to my YouTube channel.